Welcome back to Tampa Bay Cop Talk. It is the Dystopian Capitalist Welcome to Hell edition. It's gonna be Liverpool did play a game today.
Who cares? We're not here to talk
I
about
don't know
football.
about you. I paid attention to like 9 minutes of it. So yeah, we're mostly gonna be talking about the news that shook everybody's world last night, and then into today where things developed further. So I kind of want to just go around the table here for a sec and kind of do a gut check on, what is your gut reaction to all of this? We'll start with you, Andrew.
I don't like it. It's like being pinched. It's like a paper cut. No one likes a paper cut. However, I mean, I hate to be that dude, but I'm whatever. I'm very curious what the hell happens next. It's like when all y'all were watching WandaVision, we had all these fan theories, like the next episode. I'm waiting for the next episode, basically. That's because at the moment you have institutions, billionaires, millionaires being like calling each other's rats, calling each other liars and shit. This is some dramatic shit. You heard that?
Which
you heard
is
that?
All probably true,
Yeah. Like the guy was like Edward Word, the guy from Juventus. He's a liar. Blah blah blah. This and that. You have all this like drama, shade being thrown left and right. And then from that perspective, I love me some hot gossip. I ain't gonna lie, I love that shit in my daily life. So on a global scale, this is exciting. However, that being said, as a fan of of the game and of Liverpool Football Club, this is concerning to say the least. If I'm trying to be like a lawyer and dignified and shit.
You're not a lawyer. Say what you think.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, this is concerning as fuck. Like, I don't know what this means. Like, I have a wait and see approach. It's almost as if like my girlfriend broke up with me, but like I haven't accepted it yet because she broke up with me on April Fool's Day. That's where I am at the moment, mentally speaking. Like, I just gotta sleep on this shit and figure out like if this is a dream. It's kind of like when COVID started. Is this real? Is this life now? We in lockdown? What's this now? To be fair, there was positives that came from it. Some people got to work from home, and then that's it. Everything else was negative.
Yeah, I mean, Darius, like, I don't know about you, but I found myself sort of in this like existential wandering mode all day of like, if this happens and it kind of destroys everything I've known football to be, like, does that mean because our owners played a leading role in it, like, this doesn't necessarily suit the values of the club?
David,
do I disidentify with it? Like, I'll be honest with you. I grew up a New York Yankees fan, right?
Right.
But like, okay, the 1990s Yankees, right, were shit for the first half of the decade. Then Derek Jeter arrives, and they built something. And it was
like, ironically, they were actually kind of like built from the ground up, even though they were the Yankees. They were still that same franchise.
But it was organic, right? But then in the early to mid 2000s, they sold out. And I lost this like affection for it, right? Like, I just lost the feeling that it had. The games at Yankee Stadium, and then next thing you know, they're tearing it down and building the JP Morgan Chase Center or whatever it's called. It's still called Yankee Stadium, but it might as well be called something else. And like, I don't care about the Yankees at all anymore. Is this going to happen to me with Liverpool now? Like, is this
to answer your question?
There are chapters in life.
Probably.
I know. Is this the turning of this chapter?
Well, you said welcome to hell. This is welcome to capitalism. This is welcome to sports as a business, because that's what's happening here. Andrew, you alluded to a Marvel property. You called out the wrong one. You need to go to Thanos, because this was inevitable. Like, that's what this was.
Thanos, bitches, he's back.
We've seen this in every sport at every level in America. And it's almost like millions of people across the planet just learned today that sports is a business, because the hurt and the pain that so many people are feeling right now is real. But we've seen this happen over the course of decades here in the States, and it's it's another example of what some might deem as American exceptionalism. It's America being the assholes that ruin everything for everyone else, because we've taken the beautiful game and turned it into a commodity, not a sport, not a competition, but just a money generating commodity.
I would even argue not even a commodity, bro. It's at this point, and especially when the Netflix of football, which by the way will be coming,
is going to be a part of this. By the way,
and to be fair, I argue that it should for different reasons, but for different hold on, go with me, Lit. But that's a different topic.
We'll get there.
But it's essentially, it's not even a commodity anymore. It's content. It's no different what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. This is content, baby. Yeah. And that shit is content. And not that I'm a fight fan, although Brendan, shout out to Brendan, one of our local Tampa Bay fans here. He invited me over a few months ago to a McGregor fight. I don't know shit about UFC, UCF, whatever it's called. It was dope. We had some fun. But it's essentially like, if I'm a fight fan, right, I want to see the best fighters every week. I ain't going to try to pay for no scrubs. I don't want to pay for scrubs. But you consistently, their motto is, their idea is like, yo, why don't we have a heavyweight bout every week?
Well, Andrew, and I'm sure we're going to get to that. I'm sure we're going to get to that part of it, like the whole thing about the teams facing off against the other big teams. We've talked about that. We talked about it back in October, that once you get to that level of saturation where it's top team against top team all the time, it becomes devalued. We talked about that already.
5-star food and it's
right.
6-star food.
Exactly. But a big part of this is the understanding that no one was consulted from the grassroots level, from the fans to even the players, the managers. We saw this coming, and we kind of knew that this would be something that would happen, and we just could not get out of the way of this train that was coming through.
See, this comes back to another thing, though.
I got cited sources, gentlemen. Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
All right, but we knew this was coming.
Right.
The organizations knew this was coming. The leagues knew this was coming. UEFA and FIFA, they knew this was coming. And this has been going on for years, right? Like, this didn't just start recently. This didn't start even with FSG taking over. No. It's been said they didn't buy the club with this in mind. They had it, they just wanted to make it self-sustaining, blah, blah, blah. But then it became this, right? But this has been something that's been threatened for years. Bayern Munich was threatening to launch one in 2016.
Berlusconi, Milan's manager or Milan's owner. This has been a dream of his for a while. Apparently.
This is nothing new. And like, the thing is that the Premier League and UEFA, they kept being complicit. They kept inviting in these billionaires. Well, I'm sorry, but how do you think billionaires make their money? Like, it's not by giving a shit about community and what's good for, the game. It's about them and their money. I don't know what everybody thought they were going to be like when this started to get rumored. We knew this was going to happen at some point. And at no point in that journey did anybody go, here's the list of the reasons they would want to do that. And I don't think it's necessary that they do that. What we can do to just alleviate some of those issues for them is this. Like, no one ever had a plan. They just kept ruling it in the same way they always did, the same way that created the problems. They kept creating more and more football for the players to play, and it's become a problem. And now the big clubs want out, because who owns all the prized assets in football that make international football worth watching?
Yeah.
The big clubs.
They've decided they don't want a revenue share, because they've realized, especially when you see these owners that come in, they look at the American sports model, then they look at the European model, and they say, wait, so you guys have a league where you might drop out, whether it's the Champions League or the Premier League or whichever league that you're looking at across Europe. You have a risk of dropping out, so you can't bottom and then bounce back up to the top like we can in the closed leagues. And on top of that, you've got a revenue share. Why don't we just get all together, do a closed league, and then all the big dogs eat? Because that's all that this is about. It's all a money grab. And it's so obvious that it's just like, how is anyone surprised that this is happening? That's where I'm just like,
not to get too political, but this is kind of like healthcare, where like healthcare shouldn't be like privatized in a lot of ways, right? Because like you
this is what happens.
Like save lives for
okay,
beings.
So
it's not a service anymore.
Hold on, wait a second. Wait, where I'm going with this. Whereas like what you saying, like clubs losing money because of relegation and so on and so forth. That is great for sport. It's the idea of like, what's that game that's on TV? Jeopardy. Where, right? Like, you can win or lose. Will Leeds beat Liverpool today, right? right? But here's the thing. That's fucking terrible for business, homie. Like, are you kidding me? As if this podcast was making like tons of money, and you told me for a second, because I assume I would be treasurer because I love man. I assume I would be treasurer. And if y'all said to me, yo, we could lose a bunch of money if we do X, Y, and Z, I'd be like, hell the fuck no. We are not.
No, it's not even that.
That's
It's not even that.
shit.
Andrew, the apt comparison would be if there was someone who was coming to do some similar content, would you allow them to exist? Because that's what this is. They're crushing the competition.
Yeah.
This is a monopoly play.
Yeah, that's a different.
That's what they're doing with this.
Yeah,
Right,
you're
before we
absolutely
lose
right. They're preventing. Like, remember that rumor of Newcastle in the summer, where like Saudi Arabia was finna buy Newcastle. Basically, the country of Saudi Arabia. I mean, I don't know, Prince.
Yeah.
They were about to buy Newcastle, and homies were like, "Psych, you ain't buying Newcastle. We have the status quo. Let's keep that shit. We don't want no new Man City. We don't want another Chelsea. Let's just keep it as it is." And ironically, you know, if you believe the reports from that dude on Sky Sports this morning, our American this morning, he said he has a source within a club with a board member of a Big Six club, and he said something along the lines of like, some people don't like this, some board members don't even like it, but it is what it is. And the fact of the matter is like, if like it's like peer pressure. Like, two of your friends are gonna jump off the cliff. Like, you guess you got to jump off the damn cliff. Like,
but it's not just that. It's if your friends jumped off a cliff and they were gonna make $1 billion out of jumping off a cliff, would you jump off too?
But
that's what this is, dude.
But my point is though, is like maybe Liverpool
jumping into Scrooge McDuck's money.
Yeah,
you're jumping into water. Now you might not know what that water is, but does it look deep? I don't know. Like, if there's $1 billion on the line, I'd be like looking at it like, I don't know, it's got kind of a dark color. I think I can make it.
Yeah. No, but you see, my point though is like, because Chelsea, I think it was said that Chelsea or whatever, Abramovich was like, City, I think as well. I'm not sure.
City might crack. I'll be honest. If there's
it doesn't matter. The point is that they joined because at the end of the day, and I'll be honest with you, this might sound harsh, but as a fan of Liverpool Football Club, you best believe that if this was an alternate universe where Liverpool weren't in these conversations, I'd be pissed.
Of course.
As a fan, I would be like, what the fuck? Why aren't our owners...
A lot of the people who are mad today are mad that their club is not in this.
Exactly.
That's part of this.
Yeah, and it's absolutely crazy.
But before... I am upset about it. I'm a Liverpool fan. But at the same time, a part of me is like, you made the healthcare comparison, right? Like, I wanted to go back to that because, the real comparison there is like, if the United States government was upset that people were getting charged what they're getting charged for COVID treatments, ignoring the fact that our healthcare system has been fucking people for a long, long time, right? Like, this is nothing new. Like, Americans have been getting shafted on healthcare for decades, right? But now they care because it's COVID or something, right? Well, that's like Boris Johnson comes out today. He's like, we're going to do a full investigation into football. It's like, oh, really? Now?
David,
want to do it?
Listen to this, though. The fact that Boris Johnson, FIFA, and UEFA, they're in the moral high ground right now. That's how messed up this is.
Basically, Thatcher's little like granddaddy or grand cousin or some bullshit little nephew. I'm joking, obviously. They're not related, but like fair. He's our savior. No. Our potential savior for Liverpool Football Club.
I don't think
right?
you want that either, because like, look, here's the thing. This brings me to my next point. I wanted to bring it to you guys. Are there any good guys in this? Because from my point of view, I'm looking at UEFA and I'm like, you could have taken FFP seriously. You didn't apply it. Yeah. That's part of what led to this. Like, part of what led people like John Henry into ownership was the promise of FFP actually having some legs. You didn't enforce it, and now we're here.
Yeah, because that's essentially like a salary cap. Where, sorry, if fans are not familiar with FFP, the idea of like kind of leveling the playing field that
it's supposed to limit what you gotta make what you spend. So you gotta basically like operate within your means was the idea. Financial fair play, right?
Right.
Didn't happen. FIFA has been corrupt at every turn. I mean, they don't have a moral high ground to stand on. Why are they not going to go through with this? Because you really think they're going to market a World Cup in the Arab world that doesn't have Mo Salah in it? My ass. They're not going to do that. Like, they can't do it without the best players. And morally, that is a bankrupt organization and has been for a long time, right? The Premier League, 30 years ago, created a super league of its own, essentially, that has been operating at the top of the pyramid. Like you look at clubs like Arsenal and Liverpool, and we've been among them. We've just benefited from the Premier League. It took us longer to catch up to like the Uniteds and the Arsenals and the Chelseas, but at the end of the day, we've benefited from it financially just as much as everybody else.
Right.
All that shit, none of those groups did anything to stop this, and they've all actually furthered the cause at different times. So I'm like, there's no moral high ground for these people. And remember that these groups have just decided to change competitions when they want to as well, right? Like,
we've got a World Cup coming up in Qatar that's going to be in the middle of December.
Corruption, baby.
You've got a UEFA Champions League expansion happening in a couple of years where there's going to be 10 group stage games. That's not the same competition. They essentially were trying to make a super league of their own, and they just got beat out by this.
They got beat to the punch.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: it's all about like vertical integration, right? Or so the idea, like for example, Samsung, like they from what I understand, they rule all of their supply chain, right? Mm-hmm. So they make their phones, they design it, everything else. Whereas like Apple, for example, outsources it to Foxconn in China, and like people like commit suicide there. Anyway, point being, I see it. It's like a very similar concept where it's like, yo, why are we paying this homie? When I say homie, UEFA, why are we paying them monies? Why are we bringing them to the table when the product is us? If we do our own shit, we can be the Netflix of football. We'll be fine. We can break away. We can break up go with me on this metaphor. We can break up the Hollywood studio ecosystem, do our own thing, start our own streaming service, do our own products, do our own streaming series and movies and original movies, and we'll get banks, we'll get venture capitalists to fund this shit, and then we'll be able to, and then this product will be dope as hell, and we get all the monies, and ain't nobody gonna be no middleman.
No, and I'm looking at it. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that was my point, though, going back to when I mentioned Monopoly. That's what I'm talking about. It's not the game Monopoly where you just try to, like, bury everyone.
Oh, yeah.
You go and you control everything. Like, in the definition of what a monopoly is, you control all aspects of the business. You can't have any competition because you control everything. So vertical integration is a nice way of saying monopoly. So that's what the leagues are trying to do, or that's what the teams are trying to do with this Super League. So we kind of have some forms of it when you look at like baseball, the RSNs, the regional sports networks. That's like your Fox Sports Anaheim, your Fox Sports Florida, where the teams are able to negotiate directly with the TV broadcasters. You can't have that in a Premier League.
Wait, time out.
The Magic just left Fox Sports Network for something I never heard of.
Darius has direct experience working in this. Is that right?
Yeah. Dude, I did this a little bit at Longwood, but yes, I've studied this as well. But yes, so this is a part of how the teams in baseball, basketball as well, is a way that they do it. So when people talk about like, oh, well, they're going to do like the NFL version of this, the NFL actually has it so that the league is the most important thing, and then the money flows down to the teams. What you're getting with this Super League, they're making it so that it's both, so that it's every individual team is going to have their own big, powerful entity, their own negotiating rights, their own way to make all of these decisions. But then it's going to be those 15 teams that are coming in at the ground floor, at the ground level. They're going to be the ones who are making all the decisions in this. So because you have those big games, those big competitions week in, week out, that's now making it so that they control everything. They're trying to have their own TV networks, their own Netflix of football, to your point, Andrew. They're going to have it so that everything that has to do with top-end football flows through them. They make the decisions.
Let's be real. I mean, as a person that works in tech and, I write code and shit for a living, apparently, this Netflix of football should have happened 5 years ago. I'm sorry, but the Premier League has dropped the ball. I mean, if the Premier League did that, let's say a few years ago, maybe that could have maybe maybe not.
Well, could you expand that thought out, or because it sounds like what NBCSN is doing with Peacock?
Wait, hold on. What I'm saying though, because like maybe it could have been like a Terminator Skynet situation where like maybe you don't prevent Skynet from happening, the Skynet being the Super League, but maybe you prolong that shit. Because if you take out Sky, you take out BT, and you do it because the problem is now they have the broadcasting rights to all these different countries and stuff.
Gotcha.
If you like centralize that, and the Premier League was like, yo, they could have done a different deal where they were like, oh, British people have to pay X with Sky to keep Sky going, right? But then people in, for example, Egypt, United States, you get access to this app and you pay X amount of dollars. Can you imagine the billions you would make? I mean, look at again.
In theory,
to Hollywood.
But I mean that's kind of already happening.
Yeah, and
but
the
that's
other
what I'm
thing
saying. Like
that could
have tied the what's the word? Satiated the appetites of these owners because look, the Hollywood system is doing the same thing.
The one problem they have there with the whole Netflix of football thing is when you get it works in the English world, right? But when you get out and you need to speak Arabic and you need to speak Chinese and you need to speak all this, you got to have content in those languages, right? Mm-hmm. So you're just paying. Now you've got to pay
a third
more,
party again.
Exactly to create this for you. Right now, those companies just buy into this. They pay you the rights to broadcast this. So in a lot of ways, the broadcast model worked for them. Now they may find a way around that down the line, especially if they go partnering with somebody like Amazon, mm-hmm. who has limitless funds and is operating on every continent in the world already. That's different. But if you're just talking about do it themselves, the logistics of that can get complicated.
But the idea is that it needs to happen so that you take out the middleman in this case being Sky Sports, BT, mm-hmm. Al Jazeera, NBC, whatever it is in China, and if you have your own app or at least an app that's a partnership, as you said, that to be fair, that's a good point with Amazon.
But that's what the broadcasters are; they're partners. So it's very much so the same.
It's different from having thousands of partners in dozens of countries,
right?
To one or two, and more importantly, the negotiation leverage you would have as the big six you would have to make more money. And that's the thing that they dropped the ball. The point what I'm trying to make is mm-hmm. I'm not trying to come up with my own app here and fucking like create a new business here. That's not what I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, I don't know shit, and also I'm drinking. Number one. Number two. The point is that you got to what's the word? Satisfy the hunger of these owners because they've been fucking it up, right? The Premier League, they've been complacent, they've been what's the word? Lethargic. They haven't been innovative enough for the owners to be like, oh, okay, we trust what you're doing. Therefore, we're going to keep with the status quo. If that were the case, they wouldn't have made the Super League. You understand what I'm saying?
No,
if they had made, as Cardi B says, money moves, then is that what she says? If they had made money moves, the clubs would have been like, yo, all right, we got this, we good. We can prolong this shit. You know?
So the way that it's come down when it comes to like the TV negotiating, it's not just the fact that they don't have their own network or anything like that through the Premier League. It's that they have always had to be focused on, well, yeah, we're going to get eyeballs for Manchester United, Liverpool. We're going to get eyeballs for Liverpool, Chelsea, for Arsenal and Tottenham. What happens when we have Brighton and Sheffield?
Oh, those games don't matter.
Those are the games that they also have to sell off.
Those games don't matter, homie.
Too. Oh, no. But when you negotiate, you have to have that. So that content also has to get picked up. The reason why nothing the Premier League could ever compete with the Super League is because they don't have to worry about that dead weight. You don't have to say, well, if you're going to take Manchester United and Liverpool, you also got to take Brighton and Sheffield United. They don't have to worry about that anymore. That's why this model is happening, because they trimmed the fat off of the league. And the problem is we're referring to what is a huge institution in those towns like Brighton, Sheffield United, Bournemouth, like whichever club we're pointing out, these are huge entities, and we're just treating them like, they're whatever. But that's the way that the TV negotiations always happen. That those teams get tossed, they're not as big. Now, the Super League, you're trimming off those teams. They're not a part of it. They have no say, and all you have to do is worry about big dog against big dog. That's why the Premier League could not have created anything to compete with what the Super League is.
Yeah. What we're talking about here, though, is it's a bunch of people with self-interest, right? And this is what bugs me about it. It's like we're talking about Liverpool and Manchester United are looking at it like, I don't remember Burnley and Sheffield ever going and filling up the big house in Michigan in the middle of summer. Did you guys ever generate a bunch of funds that way? I don't remember, when we were sitting down to negotiate with the broadcast companies, who had to be on every week and who's having their schedule shifted around at the expense of the health of their players because they had to play Wednesday night, Saturday morning. Like I get it, right? I get their point of view. And they're up against a bunch of people who last year were ready to null and void our title just because they didn't want to get relegated and it was going to be better for their business model. Yeah. And you've got who are now saying like, oh, this isn't good, blah, blah. Well, they're speaking out of self-interest because they know that they don't hold the marketability that these clubs own. Right. But the people that lose out, like we said, are the people that live in Brighton and Burnley and Newcastle and all these other people. And those clubs do have fans around the world, not as many, but they have them. And those fans lose out. So it's just going to come down to the fans getting plowed again. And that's kind of what you can't get away from. It's like, I understand where the clubs are coming from. I totally get that they make the money and that they are the product, essentially. Like you said, these clubs are the product.
Yeah.
Without Liverpool, Manchester United, without Chelsea, Man City, there just aren't. What are you looking forward to?
Wait. Can I point out? I mean, tongue in cheek here, but can I point out in those 4 clubs that you mentioned, you notice how you didn't say Tottenham and Arsenal? Because they're small clubs, homie. They're small clubs. Get out of here with that shit.
No. Because
people watch the North London derby like you wouldn't believe.
Without a North London derby, that's another thing off the list that you're marketing. That's another. Don't think it's not a big deal for Norwich when Tottenham rocks up and they whip them 3-1. So that could be the highlight of Norwich's season,
At least, I mean, or
Watford,
maybe
they beat the champs last year.
6 in ratings. I mean, not to sound like that guy that was just in office, but I had really high ratings, but but that's essentially it, though, right? I mean,
so.
But here's the thing, though, it's very weird about football fans, and this is like the argument people need to get out of their head. That Darius alluded to earlier. Well, no one was consulted.
Well,
in what world? Sorry, this is not an attack to you, Darius. This is not personal, of course. But in what world do you think a business is going to consult their consumer?
Amazon never consults us about
You think
shipping.
Steve Jobs was like, yo, hey, homies, you guys want an iPad? I'm sure they did a focus group. But like,
they never
you guys want
us about the iPhone updates.
Yeah,
I really wish they would.
You want some iPhone updates? You want some battery?
We'll push back a little bit on that, but go ahead.
No, it's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And to my point, I got sources, homie. I got sources. All right. So we have Catherine Miach. I don't speak French, but she's the Belgian chief executive of Charlton Athletic in 2015, was doing a webinar, web summit, blah, blah, blah. And she was saying it's quite funny and weird that she thinks fans who fail to see themselves as customers, it's quite funny. They feel this sense of ownership. This was a web summit in Dublin, and it's on YouTube. Apparently you can look it up. And whenever I get very friendly emails from fans, they say, get out of our club. So it's not the stakeholders club. I think it's quite funny because they say they pay. Obviously, this ticketing system is 1/3 of our revenue. No dissimilar from Liverpool. But they go to restaurants with their family every week. They go to cinema, but they're not satisfied but if they're not satisfied with the product, do they go and scream at the people in charge of it? No, they don't. But they do it with a football club, and that's very weird because they feel a sense of ownership.
Right. The existence of Karens, they that flies in the face of that. What that?
Oh no, her name is.
She's never been a waiter.
Her name is. Hold on here. Let me get it right. Catherine. Catherine, I would imagine in English,
Yeah.
Catherine or some shit. Point is that like fans and this is fandom in anything in terms of like Star Wars or whatever is like it's inherently illogical, and that's part of the reason why I love football in a sense, because it allows me to embrace the terrible aspects of humanity in a healthy way, like the illogicalness of it all.
Yeah.
And it is right. Like, do I get mad and say to a studio that, like, I don't know, that this is my football, this is my studio, like, get the fuck out? Like, no. Do I complain to a restaurant like that? No. And it's just this entitlement. Hold on. This entitlement of fans. At the end of the day, all these clubs don't care about the local fan. They care about the fans in America
bullshit.
and in China,
bullshit,
unfortunately.
No,
that's just the way it is.
They don't care about us either. They want to exploit all.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, and here's the thing: like they use the local fan, when creating all this marketing shit.
Mm-hmm.
Sell it to the other fans. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. To sell you atmosphere and all this other shit.
Exactly.
But they don't care about them.
I mean, how many times
you say?
Go ahead, sorry.
Hold on. You say that like, oh, people think, oh, they should have been consulted, but they shouldn't. Well, actually, if the last few years has shown us anything, the clubs would do well to consult the fans before pissing them off. We've had ticket walkouts. We've had huge blow up over the furloughs. All this stuff that they've had to backtrack on time and time again, because you never consult the fans. You go and make these business decisions and never think about how it's going to play out. And then you get a bunch of backlash. You get people walking out. You get people protesting outside of grounds. Well, you never asked anybody.
And Andrew, that's where I was going to push back a little bit. And David, I'm glad you brought up the point again about the furloughs. We saw that literally happen with Liverpool, where they got bullied into taking everyone off furlough because all the fans said, that's not how we do it here. That's not to say that it's 100% effective, because ultimately they know they got us by the balls. We're still going to watch when the Super League thing does eventually happen. That's why they're moving forward with it. But they also have to understand that they're not going to be able to just implement something, roll something out, and have it be okay with the fans without it being something where you come to the fans first. Because ultimately, like with any boycott, the fans are able to speak with their dollar bills. So we've seen ticket walkouts happen. We've seen protests happen. And I think the owners would have thought this through, that they would be suffering in the short term for what could potentially be a long-term game for them. But understand that football fans aren't going to go down quietly. So this is going to be something that, whether it happens or not, and they should have more communication with the fans to avoid alienating fans, because they're going to destroy a relationship that they still do, even though they don't completely rely on 100%. They still do rely on the local fans, on the people who are there week in, week out. I understand what they're doing in trying to make more money, but what they're doing is they're going for the casual fan and they're screwing over the hardcore, the dedicated fan. And that's the trade-off they're making. And I don't think they really considered that fully. And that's where it's like, no, you probably should have talked to the fans first.
Right. And then
absolutely. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to insert something here. I don't know what yet, but we'll be
insert rum and coke and tequila and like massage therapy.
There you go.
Maybe.
Catch you on the flip side. Perhaps what makes it difficult to stomach for us is that we've come of age in a place where all other sports, the ones that involve throwing a ball instead of kicking it, have always been widely available on television. More often than not, those games can be found on networks that come into your home just by hooking up an antenna to your TV, even now. I don't believe any of us were so naive as to believe that a good thing would last forever. But it goes back to the way NBC spent the last 7 years painting itself out to be a member of the American soccer community rather than a purveyor of it. That now, when the community is rocked by an economic crisis, by unemployment, by fear of gathering in public spaces, by isolation, they've taken the decision to extract more from us. It feels a bit like we fell for the trick again. Too many times in our lives of consumption, we've had a carrot dangled in front of us, only to have it pulled away and be greeted by a puppet master with their hand held out asking for a fee. Like culture, all economies are built on people. A healthy economy ensures that the people it relies on have the ability to support it. This decision, then, does not feel healthy at this time. Welcome back. All right, so look, we've established that there aren't any good guys. I mean, UEFA is supposedly, I heard a rumor they're exploring some 7 billion euro like investment plan from somebody else. So it's just going to be billionaires going to war over each other. It's probably going to get pretty petty. There's a part of me that still thinks it is a bargaining chip. And I kind of wanted to get you guys' point of view on this because, all right, if you force it, and the big clubs say, well, you know, let's face it, the Champions League without the big clubs. If you took out AC Milan, Barcelona, Liverpool, Real Madrid, and there's one other one in there that I'm forgetting, you eliminate 31 European Cups. That's 31 times those clubs have won it. It's not that interesting without them, quite frankly. UEFA knows this. The clubs know this. But it then becomes, how does UEFA kind of appease the clubs? And I'm curious, first off, of, you know, what do you guys think comes next? Because I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, one of the things I saw earlier, and FIFA's going to get involved. We know that, right? I want to read FIFA's statement because I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on this too.
Gosh.
Because UEFA is saying as of Friday they're going to suspend clubs. The Premier League's having a meeting of the other 14 clubs tomorrow. But FIFA says this. In view of several media requests and as already stated several times, FIFA wishes to clarify that it stands firm in favor of solidarity in football and an equitable redistribution model which can help develop football as a sport, particularly at the global level, since the development of global football is the primary mission of FIFA. In our view, and in accordance with our statutes, any football competition, whether national, regional, or global, should always reflect the core principles of solidarity, inclusivity, integrity, and equitable financial redistribution.
Translation. Can't we all just get along, guys?
So hold on. Moreover,
That
the governing
means
bodies
nothing. I love it.
There's more.
Moreover, the governing bodies of football should employ all lawful sporting and diplomatic means to ensure this remains the case. Against this background, FIFA can only express its disapproval to a closed European breakaway league outside of the international football structures and not respecting the aforementioned principles. FIFA always stands for unity in world football and calls on all parties involved in heated discussions to engage in calm, constructive, and balanced dialogue for the good of the game and in the spirit of solidarity and fair play. FIFA will, of course, do whatever is necessary to contribute to a harmonized way forward in the overall interests of football.
It was the unity and the harmony that got me at the end. That was because it's one thing to say unity,
like that
solidarity.
Team is exhausted.
Harmony was the one that was just like, oh no, now y'all going full corporate speak. Just like, come on, guys. Like we understand.
Real quick. Let's be honest. We love it. The reason why we love it is because we're looking forward to the inevitable Last Week Tonight episode with John Oliver, where he's just gonna just
he's got to
roast this shit,
because
this is absolutely absurd from a moral standpoint. You know, coming from FIFA, where we've had multiple like officers and the former president under corruption charges and federal investigations. I think from the FBI, if I'm correct.
Yeah, no, they got the FBI and arrested half of them.
Yeah, motherfuckers were arrested and stuff. Like, I love it. I love it all. I'm all here for that. And that's why I said earlier, it's like a show. This is like coming into like a soap opera territory where I'm at the moment of like, yo, get me on that next episode. Let me pop my popcorn. Homie.
Well, to tell you how much of a show this really is, like, it's not just FIFA, by the way. It's FIFA, UEFA. It's a lot of the broadcasters. And Andrew, you referenced it earlier, like even us sitting here. A lot of this shit, a lot of this outrage is performative because it comes back to everyone's trying to make their money off of this. And now FIFA is in a position where it's like, we're going to talk down that thing. But on the other hand, still watch our tournament and come to us when we're going to be in Qatar. Like, everyone is complicit in this. So going back to like the whole no heroes, no good guys in this, it's very much so the same thing with that statement where you hear FIFA saying, everyone remain calm and don't lose your heads over it, but they're saying really nothing. And at the very most, we have to wag a finger at it, even though we're basically advocating for the same thing during our league. So it's nothing.
What I think is it's important to notice here is we're not even the good guys. Like, we've been complicit.
Oh,
right?
as fans,
Click, rate, subscribe.
No, not even us. Not even just us. I'm talking about
Not the
fans in
podcast.
general. Fans in general, we eat up. You know, there's a cultural question here about how we consume football, and like, we just did this to ourselves, right? Because we kept paying all the subscriptions, and we kept jumping through whatever hoops they wanted to. People were going down to Miami to be cheerleaders for NBC Sports and the Premier League in general, right? And so we just kept eating up whatever they
made
fed
football
us.
too big.
Roy Smith and Neil Atkinson had a really good conversation on the Anfield Wrap earlier, but I only caught part of it. But one of the things I took that Rory was saying was like, we celebrated transfers. Like, there was people outside of grounds celebrating transfers. That's just money being spent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we celebrated the wealth, we basked in its glow. And now
no. But sorry to interrupt, David, but to your point, like, you know, I'm not a Chelsea fan, but I know some Chelsea fans, and they're not happy with the situation at the moment. But before today or before the weekend, it was like, oh, Abramovich is great. Well, why is he great? Oh yeah, because he spends loads of money on transfers. Yeah. So that's the bar.
Well, at some point, you know,
what's
he's going to want the money.
What's so ironic? How about this?
Yeah, but
were we not all sat here like after the end of the transfer period in January, where we hear a lot of people talking about FSG out? Why were people saying FSG out? Because they didn't spend enough money. Yeah. It all comes back to money.
But
at every turn.
We want them to have lots of money and buy the best players.
Hey, but
we're complicit in that.
What's really hilarious about all this bullshit is that I'm looking at the Arsenal owner, the dude. What's his name?
Stan Kroenke.
He bought an American franchise. Didn't he buy like the?
He owns the Rapids, the Rams. Like,
it don't matter.
The Rams moved.
He clearly he bought them. He bought them and was like, "Yo, let me move cities real quick." Yeah. And then now he's like, yo, let me hire this guy who has no experience, pay him like pennies on the dollar, and then like not spend money on nothing, because I know in the back of my mind, because I've been in the meetings, Super League finna happen, and we're just gonna get boatloads of revenue from broadcasting money, and then I'll buy the team, and then I'll buy like extra shit. You know, I'll spend money on the
Honestly, you might be right. That might be exactly what happened with Kroenke and Arsenal.
It's just so, and then looking at, I'm not that I have a tin hat, and I hate conspiracy theories. But then I'm looking at it, and I'm like, this kind of makes sense.
But bro, I will say, when people talk about conspiracy theories, like the one where it's like, not really conspiracy theory, you might have some truth to it,
saying?
is
like,
when you follow the money. And you're following the money on that one.
As an example to like, let's go back to reality a little bit, to like the 99%. Like, I don't spend money if I don't have to, if I know, for example, I finna get a credit card reward. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't... Yeah. You know, if I'm going to get free money, I'll spend the free money, so to speak, or invest that, or whatever the case is, you know? And like, I'm looking at these owners and I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. And I'm just thinking, at the end of the day, you know, I'm sorry. My wife hasn't seen a lot of American classic movies, right? So a couple weeks ago, I showed her Goodfellas. I made her watch Goodfellas. She wasn't like I am, but this is some gangster shit. All of these teams did some gangsta ass shit, and they were like, "Yo, we finna just break up all of this bullshit. We just gonna go under the radar, you know, do all this craziness. F that noise. F these 100-year-old institutions, or X, Y, and Z, decade-old institutions. We're gonna do our own thing because we can do it better than you." Yeah. And mind you, this is my dark comedy self thinking, oh my God, this is why this is like the best show on television at the moment, is this, because this is what they did was just straight up like old school gangster shit. And we'll see what happens, because whether this is a poker move, whether this is going to happen, I don't know, but I'm like reluctantly fascinated to see what happens next.
A big thing in all this is the players, right? Like, what happens with the players? Because it's gonna.
Ain't nobody care about the players. We
No,
saw
they
that-
don't. They don't. But we as fans do, right? And like the
No,
players care.
that don't-
Somebody's got to play the game. They
No one
care
ca-
about
no.
themselves. Hold up.
I'll
Listen to
let you
me.
speak, but fans don't care about the players either. That's why
Yeah,
they
they
give
do.
them social media abuse all the fucking time.
Andrew, I dare you to go watch a game between two countries you never heard of during the World Cup. Watch two teams from a league you've never heard of,
Hey,
and
I'm
watch the
very
90
good at
minutes and tell me
geography.
that's what you want to see.
Hold
more
up, I'm very good at geography, so I've heard of all the teams.
of. Fair enough.
I know, but like when I read that FIFA statement, though, so there's all this talk about player bans, and there's a lot of fans concerned about player bans, like players not being able to go to the World Cup. When I read that FIFA statement, though, I don't hear too much commitment. I don't think.
Yeah.
To this idea of player bans. They're saying that they won't be able to play in UEFA competitions or FIFA competitions. I don't think it's going to stick. First of all, the players didn't make this decision, so you're going to punish them for something that their employers did. Unlikely. Second of all, you're not going to punish the fan because the fan's going to turn their back on it if you punish the players and them by not allowing them to see the best players. You won't have a marketable asset. So
Not
it's
gonna
not
punish yourself.
You're not gonna, you'd be punishing yourself. It doesn't make any sense.
So
That's not going to happen. I don't think that's part of what's next. I do think that there will be, if we're looking at this as a negotiating tactic, what do? You ask for the world and try to get what you want.
Exactly.
Right. And that's what this is. They've done all the steps. They've followed through with it. Like if they want to do it, they can do it. And they're there. Like they've taken some steps that are going to be hard to walk back. But I think that ultimately they probably still can and still will if they get what they want. So it's going to be this about to be a negotiating period, I think, and it's probably not going to be a pleasant one. But we're witnessing something historical. Like this has thrown. I've never seen anything like this in my years of watching the game. I've never seen anything like this in all my life of watching sports.
Yeah,
because we think of like what lockouts over the salary cap.
That's like this ain't no NBA lockout, man. This is something different. This is like
completely different.
This is the Knicks and Lakers, and like the three other biggest teams in the NBA, the Bulls and whoever else.
I still think the closest you get to it is like if you had a bunch of teams like in college basketball who normally make the NCAA tournament just went and started their own league. Like that's kind of the closest I think anyone has come to it because I've seen that analogy a few different times.
No, bullshit. I told my coworker today. She called me and she, it was about work, and I was like, she's like, it's late. Do you really want to talk about this? I was like, yo, this is like the fucking distraction I need. Work is my distraction. She's like, what happened? I was like, it's football related. She's like, what happened? I was like, the equivalent is like if the Pope announced on stage, like, yo, the papacy and the Vatican dissolved, gone tomorrow. And I'm like a devout Roman Catholic. That was my analogy of like, just everything just completely obliterated.
But you forgot they're gonna replace all of the all of the different churches with like strippers, like
TikTok videos and shit.
No, it's but it's gonna be like strip clubs and McDonald's.
Basically, she was like, "Oh, I don't really understand that, but okay." And I'm like, "We'll talk about it later." Puppies. Let's talk about puppies, right? And that's what eventually happened. But where were we?
I don't know, but I do want to steer us towards the next question that I have, and that is that. So our owners are driving this, and we have not always had a great relationship with ownership, right? We had the Hicks and Gillette saga. There's been some turmoil between the fan base and FSG over different things.
Right.
So how much does it bother you that our owners are helping to drive this? Like, are you FSG out now?
No.
I would say if there's anything to be FSG out over, it's this. Because it's one thing to say, they don't spend enough money, or the transfer market this or that, or even ticket prices. What they're doing, they're completely changing the structure of football in order to make more money. The only profit that they're worried about is not the profit and the prosperity of the community. It's not about us as the fans. They're only looking at lining their own pockets. So if anyone wants to be FSG out, it's over this. And I'll have anyone's back who says FSG out if they go through into the Super League. I'm 100% with you on this because this is a step too far.
But I mean, I don't want to be rude, but like, in what naive world did you think it was anything different than that?
Oh no!
Like,
I'm not saying.
As to David's point, sorry, we've seen the evidence. I have the tab.
No. There's one thing about
the ticket thing, the furlough bullshit, the stadium expansion. All of this is all about money. Everything. What?
Hold up. But my point was,
you're right.
Is that there's always some line of demarcation. There's a line in the sand, and this is it for me. This is where I'm drawing.
That's fine. I'm just saying that I agree with what you're saying in terms of like, if you're gonna be mad about something, all that other bullshit was like nonsense. That was like the kids menu on the restaurant, and this is the entree where you should be upset about. Where you should be like, yo, can I get my steak back? This is what you should get upset over. Yeah, you messed up my steak. Let me get that shit back. I understand what you're saying in that respect. But at the same time, I'm like not surprised that the steak was messed up.
No one is surprised.
No one's surprised. I mean?
So that's all I'm trying to say in terms of.
We saw this coming.
Exactly. And I'm just frustrated because what I said earlier about how fans feel entitled that it's illogical, of course. I don't expect every fan to be an Albert Einstein or whatever. But at the same time, it's illogical to think that, this wasn't coming. The Premier League was enough. No, it's UEFA has not been doing the right things. So we get upset that venture capitalists act like venture capitalists. It's kind of nuts.
It's why there should have been more regulation in the game at a sooner time, at an earlier time by powers that be, whether that was leagues, governments, whatever. It should have been a little bit more regulated, and it gets into the fact that
Boris Johnson,
the governments don't view football as culture; they view it as something else, right? So it's allowed to operate differently than a regulated business. That is an issue that probably needs addressing if this is going to get solved without it resulting in a Super League. For me, I agree with Darius. Like, I haven't been an FSG out guy, but if there is one thing that's going to push me there, it's this, because I admit the current system isn't perfect and it isn't stable, but you're not offering up a solution that benefits anybody but yourself. And they'll sit there and they'll say, oh, more money is going to make its way down the pyramid. Bullshit. It's going to be a pittance of whatever you get. It's whatever you're going to be willing to spare to shut people up. And that's all it's going to be.
move, yeah.
Yeah, it's never going to be anything more than that. And we, look, we live in this country. We know billionaires don't give a shit. That whole trickle down thing does not fucking work. It's a fucking lie. It always has been from the day it was ever created. I will say one thing. Am I upset that they're involved? No.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for saying that.
For one reason. You want the leading clubs to be at the table for these discussions, right? Yeah. Like, you need them in the room. The game needs us in its current format to be leaders, right? Now, this is not what I would want, the decision that I would want them to make. But if ultimately it does spark a conversation that drives change, that makes the pyramid more healthy and doesn't turn it into a soulless corporate venture, which is probably what it's going to end up being. But someone had to have this conversation, because football's been broken. Yeah, it's not like this is a new problem. Half the clubs in England are staring down the barrel of their extinction, right? So, like, the current model is not. It doesn't work perfectly.
Yeah. Papa don't like.
Well, I got a question.
If we can have that, turn this into a conversation about how to fix it and how to make it a little bit more sustainable across the board, it will ultimately do some good. But
so my question on this, though, all right, when it comes to the owners being a part of it and Liverpool being one of the seats at the table, does it make a difference that we kind of know at this point that this is a pact that's been signed by all the owners, but Liverpool themselves have not had a voice? It's been a voice coming from Real Madrid's owner. It's been a collective voice
Joe
from the Super
Glazer,
League. Joel Glazer, right? But like
But the
John
folks that
Henry,
work at Man
John Henry
United-
himself has not spoken up. Liverpool has
they
not
need
put
to
out
get on
a
the mic.
team statement. It's only been
Yo.
or a club statement. It's only been from the Super League, and it's only been from some of these other voices. Does that make a difference to you guys?
Real quick,
it's infuriating that John
Yeah,
Henry has not said a word. We haven't heard from Tom Werner. We haven't heard from Ed Woodward, who's apparently one of the architects of this.
Joke's coming, but like, I mean, not that I guess British government doesn't work this way, but like, imagine the Senate hearing where like John Henry has to answer fucking questions. Like he's in Parliament, like talking to Boris Johnson and shit.
No, that might
would
have
be
to
dope.
happen.
That would be
That might have to
might
happen.
happen.
I hope because you'll get a lot of right honorable gentlemen talk, and I really enjoy that from British Parliament.
Yeah. It's like, it would be fantastic.
The right honorable gentleman from Massachusetts wishes to speak, sir.
Yeah. It would be absolutely brilliant. And that,
No, I mean it's.
but I will say that about the Joe Glazer thing though. Can you imagine you're a Liverpool fan, you're a Manchester City fan, you're a Chelsea fan, and not one of your ownership group, your Abramovich's, your Michael Edwards, none of that shit. None of them make a statement. It's Joel fucking Glazer. And as a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, that's upsetting and like just absolutely crazy to think that like a Man United, executive is speaking like is someone even mentioned on my club's website, and that's also it's just optics. Like again, at the end of the day, like if shit gets done, shit gets done. But at the end of the day, humans are irrational creatures, right? So optics are super important, and that it's like as if they didn't hire a PR firm for this. It's just really upsetting in terms of like
I think
if they're going to do this fine, but they could have done this in a much better way.
See, here's the thing. I don't know if they could have because like it was always going to piss people off.
They just ripped off the Band-Aid. They just did it quick.
They just did it quick, and now they're looking at it like there's a.
That's why they did it.
They braced for a backlash. They're like, there's going to be a huge uproar about it for a while. Mm-hmm. They're banking on it. Either eventually this works itself out, and we're going to go back to the way things were, but with a different. We have more control in UEFA, and we'll get more of the funds.
Right.
Or we break off, and this may take a couple of years, but 2 years of all these clubs and all these players being in this league together, people will watch it. A certain amount of people will watch it. It will start to make the rounds.
We'll be sick of watching it.
And here's the thing that
it'll make the rounds on social media. The uproar will calm down.
1,000%. This is
other players are going to want to go to it, and they'll go on like it never happened. And so it's
their investment.
They're playing the long game.
Returned. That's all they're looking for. The ROI on it.
Yeah, and here's the thing though. Because
you're going to say something. Yeah.
Sorry. No, the thing is for me is what people need to understand. This idea of like, I was in the bar earlier watching the Leeds match. Who gives a shit? What is that even?
We really don't even need to talk.
We don't need to talk about that game.
Equalize or whatever.
I'm glad Mane scored though. That being said though, Sadio, all about that.
My favorite part of the whole thing was Bamford's quote afterwards. That was the best part of the game.
Milner was
is that confirmed as being real news, not fake news?
Oh yeah, no, that was
Bamford's quote. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, F that noise real quick. So, I just don't know. Like, people need to understand this concept of like. I'm going back to the fans here for a second. Mm-hmm. Like these owners, these businesses, just okay. So Liverpool, we've seen the videos on Redman or whatever talking about how like apparently we have like scientists finding the next Salah via numbers and data and X, Y, and Z. Right. Yeah. So the idea that these owners don't have the same kind of mechanisms in terms of lawyers or in terms of marketing people to figure out like, hey, is this viable? Is this a great thing? Because let's be real. It's not like three owners got together, smoked a little bit of weed and was like, that would be so cool. No, it's not how it works. Right. So what I'm trying to suggest is that fans, they're all saying they're all going to boycott. But the reality of the situation, there are billions of fans. And to my point, FIFA has more nations, more states than the United Nations. I always say this point when I talk to Americans that don't like soccer to convince them, like, yo, this is a cool thing. Look, United Nations ain't shit. It's all about FIFA, right? And that's the reality of the situation. You have all these neutral fans, and more importantly, in this book, and I think in 2010 I read in college, it's called Soccernomics. These two authors, they challenge the idea of are soccer fans polygamous? This idea that, like, for example, when you move to a city, sooner or later you start supporting your local city, your new local team, and you split loyalties, right? But more importantly, it starts also talking about the foreign fan, and that, you know, you what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you can jump ship, so to speak. That's why we've met, for example, in the bar years ago, David. You remember this guy? I forgot his name. Where he had like a Newcastle top. He had
I don't even want to talk about
you know that guy.
Move on.
He's terrible. He's a terrible human being. But the reality of the situation is, like, our wanted fan, fandom isn't really treated like a religion, and for the majority of humans, unfortunately. So at the end of the day, if all of us, let's say best case scenario, all of our fans, you know what? How many followers are on Twitter, Instagram, etc. for Liverpool?
I couldn't give you an exact number, but yeah, to
A
your
few
point,
million.
Andrew, like,
My point is, there's millions more that would be willing to watch Liverpool Real Madrid on a Wednesday night every 3 weeks. That's my point.
Right.
At the end of the day, they win. So this idea that fans are going to protest and like sway the opinion of a billionaire is absolutely nonsense. I mean,
but that's why I said earlier that they don't care about the hardcore fans. They don't care about the people who watch the same team week in, week out. They only care about the people who pop in for the big games. They only want the casual fan, the people who don't actually like soccer, the people who don't actually support a club. They want the people who are just looking for a spectacle. And that's what they're going for with this Super League. That's why this is so damn depressing.
Look, they know.
And I just wanted to point that out again, because I think it's very important to have the average person understand, ain't nobody care about you. Nobody care about you. Nobody care about what you love. No one cares
actually,
about
they care about the
savings.
casual fan very much.
No one cares about
the people who's just going to buy a PSG because J. Cole wore it. That's the person they want.
Here's the thing. They know another thing about the hardcore fan. You've sat through evolutions before, and you kept consuming it, right? So you watched as the Champions League became played.
Thank you.
Not amongst just champions.
Yeah.
Right now it's like top 4, and then the Europa League winner got in. We keep changing it, and now we're adding teams, and we're going to have 10 group stage games, and you're going to keep watching it. Yeah. And the Premier League didn't always exist, but then it did, and it fucked up football. There's only been 7 champions of it ever, right? Like, it's not like it's this. We talk about it like it's this equitable system. This is another thing that bothers me, is it's not. It's still only open. It's like, oh, well, it's open to everybody. No, it's
if you got enough money to.
It's open to whoever has the most money and whoever has the most pedigree. That's all it's ever been open to. Right. When was the last time Osasuna was in the Champions League? You know what I mean? When was the last time Burnley won an FA Cup?
But here's the thing: the nostalgia, the theory that
it's the theory, it's the idea. Yes. I get it.
The next Nottingham Forest can happen, right?
But it's going to have to. You know what? The only way that's ever going to happen is if some kind of salary cap type structure gets put into place so that the talent gets redistributed and everybody has to play within a certain limit.
That's why Leicester is so special, because it was literally improbable.
It was a miracle.
It was a miracle.
There's been 2 miracles in Premier League history: Blackburn in '95 and Leicester in 2016.
That's it.
Everything else has been United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and there was one more. I'm blanking on somebody, I think, but it's all been the same shit forever. And like Man City was the other one. Yeah. But yeah, so I this idea that it's, you know, it's not equitable. It's not equitable now. Who are we kidding? Like, it's not like Sunderland's going to climb back up the leagues and win the Premier League anytime soon.
But in theory, they can.
Sure, by the time I die, maybe.
That's why Sunderland till you. Okay, I get it now.
Sunderland till you die, right? No. So I want to finish on this. What is your biggest fear in this? And can any good come of it? Go quick, Andrew.
Fear. I have no fear. No, I have to wait and see. Honestly, I know that's not a popular opinion, but in terms of goodness, I mean, I hate to say that, but if more money's in the picture, and less people have more money, then theoretically maybe they will be forced to do the right thing for appearances. I mean, it's part of business. You appearing to be authentic, and that could ironically help grassroots football in a way that's not happening now. Maybe the waste that's been going on with grassroots football in terms of the waste of the ROI on dollars spent, maybe that could be improved.
No, they're poorly run.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say, basically. Like if you give less people money and they're in charge of it and or distributing it, maybe it can be allocated better and that could be made more efficient theoretically. But fans. Let's talk about this for a second. 30 seconds. By the way, in all the documents, from what I understand, it's all referred to as a Super League. It had nothing to do with the European Super League. So. Beckham in Miami's finna be in a few years. You damn sure that's gonna happen.
Or the global Galaxy. Super League is an eventuality.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. So the idea
intergalactic once we get to Mars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the idea of I said this in last year, the idea of Bayern Munich and Barcelona and Tokyo and Japan, I mean, as far as me being a human and understanding the idea of going to see your club and blah blah blah, spending all that money, maybe a 6-year-old kid will be able to see them in Tokyo, Japan, and be a big fan. You know what I mean? That respect, that's kind of cool. If I have a big heart, I guess, if I'm being super optimistic about things.
Okay.
But I understand you can argue about how that kills the game and fandom and blah blah blah. But.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with what good could come from it, because I do think if it becomes something where you have more access to the biggest level, the top games, to more people. So it's if you are in Johannesburg, or if you're in Shanghai, or if you're in Nice, and you actually have a chance that a club you would have never seen before actually can come to your city. Maybe that could be something good. But ultimately, my fear is what it's going to be, which is the complete bastardization of the sport, the complete changeover from having your country be a part of what your club is built into, having that be a part of the setup, and them just becoming the Harlem Globetrotters of football, where the top-end product may end up being better, but it's just the heart and soul of it will have completely gone. And not just that, but also the fact that we may see a realistic situation where everyone is firing off their nukes, where it is everyone goes through with the threat that they're making, where FIFA won't allow any of these players to go into their tournaments, where the World Cup becomes a tournament that doesn't have the top talent in it, where the Super League has all the money and then the FA Cup really doesn't mean anything, and the Champions League still goes, but it's basically like the Europa League now. That's the nightmare scenario that I'm concerned with, that everyone goes through on their threat and everyone loses because of it.
And in the short term, that's okay. In the long term, it's not. But in the short term, those institutions can weather that storm, because it's all about marketing, right? My mom's not going to know that Mo Salah's not playing the fucking World Cup in a couple years, in the next year, right? She's not going to know. She's not going to get even if she's bombarded on Fox News, she's not going to know that shit.
Yeah, but right? Eventually, if you keep that up, the World Cup will become the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. The next World Cup
that's what'll happen.
Yeah,
I think if there's any good to come out of it, it'll be that it forces a discussion. That's my hope, is that it forces a discussion, and that we have to rethink the way football is set up, and maybe to make it a little bit more sustainable and to make the clubs actually act within their limits. My biggest fear is that it works.
You love it.
That we get used to it. We like it.
Yeah, that it's more so that we get used to it, or that it becomes the norm.
Yeah.
And that there's really no way back from it.
Wait, real quick question.
To be such a wild success that.
Quick question. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I do think it's an eventuality, like turf pitches. I know nobody over there likes that turf, but you best believe they've been developing it for a reason. It's because one day there won't be enough potable water in the world to be making excuses for watering patches of grass
Like
so that
5
people
years
can
away
run
from
around. Yeah, it's not even that far off. And so it's an eventuality just like that. And there's going to be things evolve. These competitions have evolved. The game has evolved, and it will continue to do so. And it should, maybe. I think it's possible that it absolutely should, and maybe we should all face the fact that as uncomfortable as it is, just is a reality, an eventuality that we're going to have to get used to. I don't like it, but we are where we are.
Liverpool, Barcelona, baby. Next week, Real Madrid, and next week, Bayern. I'm all about it. Let's go! Woo! Let's fucking go!
Soon enough, the Galacticos will be home on Mars. So
yeah. I'm all about it. Let's do it. Let's go. Buying tickets. We'll get to the fucking moon. Let's go.
All right. With that, we didn't do intros, but I'm David.
I'm Darius. Ozan Kabak was actually really good today.
Yeah, he was great. He was great.
Yeah, he was good.
I saw him make some runs up the pitch. It was fantastic.
He was really good in a meaningless game that doesn't matter at all.
Meaningless game.
Bye.
All right, bye.